suggestion of identification of members, that we actually agendize a decision around that in public session, including the consideration of whether it will include a member of the CBOC. I think we should agendize whether we believe the scope should be identified by the forensic auditor themselves or somebody before that. And then I believe we should agendize some conversation around timeline, how long this will take. My suggestion to the board is that we move swiftly on setting a timeline and moving this process forward. Those are things that are, I think, are well taken. Suggestions, including the notion of, to what extent can we make this as transparent a process as possible? Not whether we are required to, or if we have the legal authority not to, but can we go above and beyond and make everything precluding what is a major liability for us as public and transparent as possible? So I would like to know when we would at least decide on having those definitives discussed and decided.
I think that we should move as quickly as possible. I would like to see this on the next board agenda, so that when we can actually go through and make some decisions and actually set up the subcommittee and make a decision as to whether or not it would comprise anybody from the CBOC or anybody from the public, for that matter. The public has shown a great interest in this, and it may well be that there are citizens who would want to serve on it, and at least we should have a conversation around that. And I think that the scope is very important, and the scope is selection of the forensic auditor, and whether or not, it is important to understand who you're selecting. So I think that there is a backup to that, where we need to determine the scope of the forensic audit at the same time before we describe what we're looking for from the attorney. And I would hope that we would have a complete timeline set up so that the public can feel comfortable knowing that these are the dates by which these decisions are going to be made. That's, I believe, a very important thing. And I think Mr. Haxo's point is well taken too. And when we're looking at what we expect when we are at the point of making selections, that those candidates come before the board and do their presentation and say, and introduce themselves and say why they would be thinking to take board this. I think I know they did that in Kensington, and they've done it in other places too. I think they should.
Which group of candidates are you?
The last three that would be,
okay.
that rather than just talking about them, that they would actually be there and give a presentation. I think that serves the public well to know who we're talking about.
We do it all the time.
Yeah. So additional comment based on our conversation we're having right now, especially what Board Member Cronenberg said, is I agree with you on those things. I'm not sure, though, given the concern around your role in that, and as a decision maker, do you think it's appropriate for you to help us set the scope, the timeline, and the membership of that, in terms of what concerns folks have around a potential, whether there is or isn't conflict of interest with your involvement?
So the answer around that is that I realize that there's been a conversation about my recusing myself because of my support in the construction industry in the past. I believe there is no reason that I can't be impartial. The legal opinions I've received show no reason why I can't be impartial. And I don't want to support a narrative that contributions make someone impartial. So I do believe I can continue to be as impartial as I have been throughout my career.
Okay.
One thing that concerns me about that is that, in a way, it's a personal decision, but then at the same time, it's a personal decision that could affect whether or not this whole process is accepted by the public.
I would, want to serve on the subcommittee. I think that would be, because that wouldn't necessarily be something that's done in public. I would want all my decisions made in public. But I think that being one of 5 votes within the public, just as I received the contributions within the public, just as I conducted all of my campaigns in the public, I think being one of 5 votes is totally appropriate.
One question. So my concern is that I don't want to spend money on this if there continues to be questions about how impartial the process was. But what I think I want to get some clarity from the board members that you have decided you will not make a decision to recuse yourself on your own voluntarily.
That's right.
That's right. Okay. And then your impression is that the steps you're going to take to demonstrate, even if there is a potential conflict of interest perceived, is that you won't participate in things you think would be a smaller subgroup like the subcommittee.
And anything that's not open,
Anything that's not open.
where a vote would be taken.
Okay.
Or in that, let me just speak more specific, in the particular subcommittee as we're talking about here.
Okay. And then my next question then to this entire board is that are each of you comfortable with that in how we proceed in the process?
So we are, I think we're setting this.
Direction.
So we're setting direction for the next meeting. And that your question is around, what is your question specifically?
Specifically around Ms. Cronenberg's continued participation as she's described in the process itself.
I see no legal conflict, and I see no indication that there is I checked with the Fair Political Practices Commission today, and it's perfectly allowable under FPPC rules. In fact, it's considered that most people who are going to be elected to office are going to have constituencies and supporters, and they're going to they're put in office sometimes to champion the interests of those supporters, and so that it's considered a part of the democratic process, at least by the FPPC. So I'm comfortable with Ms. Cronenberg's participation.
Can you cite the code that specifically addresses this particular situation?
Can I? Yeah, I think I can. I can check my I mean, we really shouldn't.
We're just having dialogue with each other. So you have a code in your mind that has landed where you're at. Is there anybody else who wants, I mean, I'd be willing to share what my thoughts are, and that is board member. I think the right thing to do is to actually recuse yourself simply because sometimes we have to make sacrifices of ourselves for a greater good. And I actually think this is an instance for the sake of the public and our transparency. If you were to ask me, Valerie, what would you do if you were me? I would recuse myself. However, I'm well aware that is your choice. And there are legal opinions about whether that's public or not. I will say, though, I'm concerned that we go through all this process and have people to continue questioning the integrity when all it takes is one person to do something, a sacrifice for the greater good of this process.
I'm just gonna close out with my thinking on that very quickly. I spent a lot of years in our schools teaching the Constitution of the United States. Given that I see no proof of malfeasance and I don't see anything that's come up in a verifiable way yet, that it's really a great idea to ask someone to recuse themselves when they have actually not gone through any legal process other than saying it's the right thing to do. If Ms. Cronenberg wants to do that, I would support it. If she decides to go ahead and recuse herself, I would support it. She's been a very valuable member of this committee. The fact that, you know, we're looking at campaign funds, supposedly, fine, okay? that's record. Let's work with record. I don't have a problem with that. But I do think that if a candidate believes they're able to go before the public and say that they are ready to serve, and you get the opportunity to vote on it, and that's some of the problem with this is we can't wait until the next election. It's important for us to all go ahead and say, hey, is there enough evidence to support that? If there is, you vote your conscience just the same as we have to.